Welcome everyone to day 2 of the Web3 Journal Web Conference. It's a lot of web in there. We have a fully packed day of guests and panelists who are going to be talking about a variety of subjects. So kicking off this discussion from, all these is going to be in Pacific Standard Time as well too. From 10 to 10:45, we're going to be discussing Dapp infrastructure. The next panel, we're going to go over blockchain games. From 11:15 to 12 will be the future of consumer-focused dApps. That will be followed by a 1-hour break, and then we'll come back for our final 2 panels on the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and end with a discussion on real-world adoption. So this first panel, I am joined by some very well-respected individuals from the blockchain community to discuss Dapp infrastructure. And we will start by going around, and I'll introduce everybody. So first up is Perelman, the co-founder of ChromaWay, also COO and, co-founder with the COO, co-founder of Color Coins and co-founder of SafeBit. Next is Tom, is it Teman or Teman?
Teman.
Yeah,
Teman.
Right. Tom started programming many years ago, studying computer science from high school through university, and has been a professional software engineer and manager for the past decade. When blockchain came around, Tom was immediately smitten. Invested several years researching security and UX and blockchain technologies, finally took the plunge and left his cushy programming job to co-found Portis, a platform for bringing the Dapp revolution to mainstream users. Tom is also a maker, a frequent traveler, and a hardcore movie and TV buff. Last but not least, Allie is a crypto investor, founder, and advisor. Currently a co-founder of Blocktag, a project securely connecting physical assets to the blockchain. Allie also writes tech-focused project analysis at Blepcoin. Blepcoin.com. And previously, she was DevOps software engineer at Whisper and led API at Bottlenose. Allie has a BS in electrical and computer engineering from Carnegie Mellon University. Welcome, everyone, to the first panel.
Great to be here.
Likewise.
So we have a very specialized group of people here today, and I guess we'll kick off, talking about Dapp infrastructure. Is that most people outside the blockchain community have probably never heard of Dapps. Inside the community, it's probably only a small portion who have ever used them. When we talk about Dapp adoption, I think it's not an insurmountable uphill battle, but it is going to be it's going to be a couple of years of teaching people how to use them and how to integrate them with the current technology that they have. I'd like to get your guys' opinion on where we're at right now in Dapp infrastructure, and what are some of the key challenges ahead for Dapp developers, and what you're working on specifically to address those challenges. Would anybody like to start?
Yeah, I don't mind starting. Anyone who's developed for Web3 in the past couple of years has been able to see the real big change that happened. I mean, when about mid 2017, I think MetaMask was the only option for letting users communicate with the blockchain. There were hardly any tools out there which let you, build and develop easily. And now you have just so many tools out there for developers. It's moving really, really fast. If it's Truffle, if it's Superblocks, if it's a host of Web3 providers, Portis included. And as a developer, I think that the landscape has changed, tremendously when you want to develop for dApps. But we still have a long way to go. Is Sam there? I think we lost Sam.
Yes, we lost Sam, guys. I'm sorry for this. Let me just figure out where he is.
Yes, the chat app is still not a thing in 2019.
Okay, 1 second. I'll ask our patience for now. I'm trying to figure out what happened with Sam's connection. He's probably rejoining right now. Yeah, here he is.
Sorry, I got briefly disconnected there, but I'm back now.
Welcome back.
So I missed missed your response, Tom, but maybe you could give me the 2-second.
Yeah, so the TLDR is that, it was very rough like a year or two ago, and we've had a lot of tools and libraries and, Web3 providers, and in general, as a developer, the landscape is much more, easy nowadays. But we still have a long way to go. There are still problems which we haven't really solved. I think the major two ones are either private key management, which is a big problem when you're talking about letting the average user manage their private keys, and gas fees. In the second part, gas fees, we're making some headway, but private key management is still difficult.
I guess we'll come over to Or. As the co-founder of ChromaWay, what have you and your team been doing to address the challenges that Tom talked about, and are there any other ones that you didn't mention for Dapp infrastructure?
Yeah, so I mean, with our experience, we co-founded a thing that was called Color Coins, and I'm not too sure that many people before 2000 know about it that joined it around 2016, 2017, but it was kind of like the first way to issue any kind of digital assets on any kind of action application that was running. Hard for us to actually certain decentralized application, which is still, by the way, up and running. But the main reasons is that we had to actually develop our own tools just to actually perform a simple query to the blockchain. You couldn't index the blockchain at all. And that was the main issue for us. To this day, you don't have the right maybe tooling or the good UI UX for the developer to actually perform that. Because if you look at the many decentralized applications that you have today, I mean, they're not really decentralized. They're still being hosted at IPFS or a database or whatever it is, and just issue a certain token. And that's basically about it. So, for example, if you looked at many games, I mean, not only the MetaMask issue that you have to actually install a MetaMask and then you have to upload it. Nobody wants to do that. And then you actually have to pay gas fees just to actually transfer a certain non-fungible token, which is not too exciting. I mean, you cannot do much more than that on the blockchain right now. So basically, that is our experience, and that is why we started developing our own chain, which is called Comapolis, but I don't want to touch that and push that too much. So basically, that was our own main experience. But if you look at any kind of game that is right now running, I mean, it's not so good.
Allie, do you want to add some comments?
Yeah, so I mean, I completely agree that UX considerations as well as gas, private key management are probably the top three problems in blockchain Dapp development today and adoption. I also think that there's certain things that we just don't have in the infrastructure right now. For example, good app stores, good wallets that connect with app stores, and yeah.
So, one of the things that Tom mentioned was private key management. I know I can't really expect everyone to maintain fully secure private keys at all times. I mean, maybe you can. I mean, but it seems like it's a big ask for or big ask limiting the growth of dApps in the future. You know, there's a lot of people who understand proper private key management and companies that understand it as well too. But what do you think some of the solutions are to address this and which are being rolled out right now?
So what I'm really excited about is the rumor about the new Samsung phone having a built-in hardware wallet, because yeah, I think that's what most people are missing is the hardware wallet, the security of having a hardware wallet while having the UI, UX of a cell phone wallet. Yeah.
So I agree that the Samsung wallet is very exciting because, you know, I'm guessing a lot of people in the crypto space have hardware wallets already, if it's Trezor, Ledger, KeepKey. And while they do the job very well, they are not very user-friendly. And hopefully Samsung will be able to give you that key store in your device, which is both secure and easy to use. But I think that's one approach, which means that the private key is stored to a device, stored inside. And that's one way. The second way that you have is a centralized service, if it's Coinbase, etc., where you tell someone, you hold my private key for me. And for some people, that might be a good solution as well, because, you know, they're not that concerned about the whole concept that someone else is holding their private key. Obviously, it might feel like going back in the wrong direction, because the whole point of decentralization is bring the power back to the users, but the private key doesn't necessarily have to be owned by the service that you're using. So it can be in a way which does still provide value, but, you know, that remains to be seen. And finally, there's also the third approach, which is what we do at Portis, which is end-to-end encryption. So kind of like the LastPass 1Password way, which is we take your private key, we encrypt it on your device using your secret, so you're still the complete owner of that private key, but then we store it on the cloud, again, encrypted, so only you can decrypt it, but you can access it from all of your devices using an email and password, which is, we feel like a hybrid of the two. You still own your private keys, but you can still access them wherever you want. Obviously, if you lose your password, you forget it, it's the equivalent of losing your device. But we want to offer you some sort of backup for that. So there's always the problem, you know, it's the famous paradox of private key management, you know, make some copies of your private key, because if you don't have any left, then it's gone forever, but don't make too many, because if someone gets their hands on it, then, you know, it's gone forever. So it's a fine line to walk.
What about some of the...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, another solution that I personally use, as well as recommend everyone else use, is Shammer secret sharing, which takes your secret and splits it into multiple parts. So you can split it into, let's say, 5 parts, and then say hide these 5 parts in different areas. If anyone steals one part, they can't reconstruct your original key, and you can set it so that you only require, let's say, 3 of the 5 in order to reconstruct your key. So there are several projects out there currently that are trying to use Shammer secret sharing as well as the web of trust in order to be able to manage your keys in a decentralized way. I'm pretty excited about these, even though they haven't really done well in this market, but yeah, we'll see.
When you're referring to the Shamir secret
sharing,
secret sharing, that's pretty close to having some sort of, I mean, it can be used in a case where you have, I don't know, let's say you're using an app and you have like 5 friends who then nominate, or, you know, 7 friends, or how many it is, as people that would be able to hold a portion of your key using Shamir secret sharing. And then if you lost it, they would be able to you know, use that social connection to unlock it for you and provide those details back to you.
Yeah, exactly. If you have 7 friends, you can require it to like reconstruct with only 3 if you don't, if that's enough security for you, or if you can require 6, so that as soon as one is lost, you just recover your key and then make another split.
Well, that requires you to go out and find 7 friends first, though.
Yeah.
Our wife and family.
Yeah, actually, we believe that the approach and that we're going to add social recovery to Portis is going to be just one person. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but usually, who is going to be that one person? It's going to be, we're aiming for the moms and dads. We're not just looking at the crypto nerds using blockchain. We're talking about like the average user. So I'm just imagining like you're like a mom setting up an account. So she'll just ask her son, you know, who understands, just you hold a backup. If I need it, you'll help me restore it. But I don't need to wake up 3 out of my 5 friends at 2 a.m. in the morning because I forgot my password. You know, we're still dealing with humans here. It's kind of like, you know, this is the blockchain, so there's no trust between anyone, which is great. That's the underlying concept. But end of the day, we do have people who trust each other, and we should utilize that, and we should, you know, leverage that, not be so, you know, black hat about everything.
Or do you have any thoughts on evolution of private key management?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like the multi-sig concept. I mean, it's fairly simple as well to the additional secret sharing, where you have to kind of like split the keys. I mean, I guess you have several concepts that are very similar to one another, but the problem is that it's still very complex again to the regular user. So I don't think the regular user will use any of them because they want to be too focused on, hey, what happened if I lose my private key? Then I will lose the keys to my home or something like that. So it's still kind of like a different kind of like UI UX issues, I guess, and a very big security thing too.
I think there's great strides to be made with placing private keys in some sort of hardware enclosure inside of a mobile device. You know, that's one thing that we haven't seen yet, and it's rumored to be coming out with the next Samsung Galaxy phone. But you know, we primarily, I think, at least myself, I primarily consume most of my content on the internet through my mobile device now, and you know, I guess it's a notable exception that, you know, you haven't seen too many dApps that are built for mobile yet. So it seems to be, at least in my opinion, the next kind of big bridge that's going to have to be crossed. Like, how do you provide mobile users the ability to use dApps and use them securely and be able to provide all the same security and UI and UX abilities that you would on a normal computer. And I guess speaking of the mobile infrastructure, you know, what's needed to get there to be able to use dApps on your mobile phone? Is that a coming possibility, or are we a few years out from that because of the private key management and also the UX UI issues?
I think currently, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so I think currently most projects take the path of making a wallet, and then within the wallet, including a browser that exposes Web3. So yeah, since most dApps currently are run just in your browser, so that makes sense for now, but I'm really excited about native apps being available in the future when Web3 is available for native apps. But as I mentioned earlier about app stores, it's very difficult to get anything crypto related listed onto an app store. So I think we have to solve that first before native apps become a reality.
Yeah, I agree. I think the problem of you know, hoping that Apple approves an SDK which deals with private keys, and also you have the problem of some countries not allowing end-to-end encryption, for instance, and that's part of the reason why we went for web with Portis, because there's no real way to stop it. And in general, the whole concept of having like a wallet that has a browser inside just raises a whole lot of problems, both in terms of user experience, because it feels a bit like 1999, where you have those portals where you go and see websites through them. And, you know, I just want to use my existing browser. And also it raises a lot of technical issues because, well, anybody who's developed for web knows that, you know, you add another browser, then that's going to be fun. So, you know, it's better to use the existing ones. So in a sense, you do have mobile capabilities. If it's through the mobile browsers, if it's simply through web with solutions like Portis and others that work in the browser. And native application is still going to be a problem in terms of just getting those SDKs approved by the app stores. That's the big hurdle right now. And as soon as those floodgates are open, then I'm guessing that we're going to see a whole lot of native apps.
What about using a Ledger just came out with their Bluetooth enabled wallets. I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot more of these types of external Bluetooth enabled wallets that probably, or most probably, will be able to connect to mobile devices. Maybe a solution like that will enable the dApps to be able to function, because then you would just have to carry an extra piece of equipment in your wallet or in your pocket, and that would be able to use these dApps and be able to access them through your own privately controlled wallets.
Yeah, I think that makes sense if it's in more like a credit card format. I think just because having mainstream people change their habits, carrying a ledger like form factor, I think is a lot harder than Samsung, or a lot harder than a cell phone, just like having it built in, right?
Yeah, I completely agree.
changing
user habits is the hardest thing to do ever.
Yeah, I don't think
why
maybe
that's being used.
Yeah, we shouldn't change their habits though. We should, we can't educate the users. We have to offer them what they already know. And credit cards is a good solution. Look, when you boil it down, what you want to do is you want to have this secret which the user can carry around and nobody can use but him. That's basically what we're trying to do. Now, if you can put that string into a credit card and then you have to put it next to your phone, it's an NFT or something, and that allows it to see the private key or just sign it or something, that's great. But then you raise the question, what happens if I lose that credit card? Anybody can use it, and it's blockchain. Once the money is gone, it's gone forever. Some people are talking about biometric, which is an interesting approach, but there's always the problem that maybe the device will read you, as 1101, and another device will see it as 1011, and then it's kind of like, oh wait, I can't. And it's and there's talks about like fuzzy matching and stuff like that. I've yet to see a solution which actually works, but that might be the way. Maybe we'll all walk around with some sort of retina scanners, and that'll be our way of just like, like in some sci-fi movie, you just go up and, yeah, let me scan your eye, and that's it. You sign a transaction like that, perhaps.
What are some of the scaling solutions that are coming in that will be able to be used by dApps going into the future?
Well, I hope that we will be able to solve those, but also the UI UX part. So like we're launching tested fairly soon. And we have a very unique kind of like scaling horizontal solution. Feel free to go to the website. I won't go deep into that, but yeah, feel free.
What, Allie, can you provide some commentary on existing public chains that have been out for a while, like Ethereum or even Bitcoin?
Yeah, currently, so I don't really have many opinions on these. Well, I have many opinions, but they're very weakly held opinions. So yeah, I don't really have much to add.
Sam, what was the question? How do we deal
just to help with some of the scaling solutions. So there's a lot of limitations because of, we all know the Bitcoin and Ethereum's limitations. What are some of the scaling solutions coming in for, it could be those or even other ones that will allow them to take on more transactions and have a larger user base?
Yeah, so we are seeing, for instance, the rise of layer 2 networks. If it's POA network, or if it's Loom network and networks of that sort, which are more based on proof of authority or proof of stake, which are already trying to implement what Ethereum is trying to move towards. And I think that's currently one of the solutions that we see, or even private networks. For instance, I don't know if you know about the application Auctionity, which offers you can take NFTs and actually place them on auction. So they need the bidding to happen really fast. So they run the bidding on a private network. It's still public, so anybody can see the bids taking place. Obviously, because it's private, you have to trust their network. But because it's public, then you can see that everything is happening as it should, and they can make the fees, the bids cost zero, and they're super fast because it's a private network. But when you actually win the asset, then that asset moves in the Ethereum network, where you don't really mind if it's 15 seconds or a millisecond, because you're moving an asset. It's okay if it's happening in 15 seconds. So it's like a hybrid solution. We use the side chain for the things that we need to be really fast and can, tolerate a bit of not having it completely decentralized in a way. We use the public aspect of the blockchain, not necessarily the whole problem of trust, and we move the actual asset on the public blockchain, which is a bit slower, but is much more robust when it comes to decentralization. So it's kind of like, enjoying the best of both worlds in that case. And you see that in games as well, and other solutions, other platforms.
So do you think the features and benefits that layer 2 solutions provide, like you're saying with proof of authority, really negate the internal limitations that we were talking about before? So there would be, using a layer 2 solution, there'd be no real difference between doing something on Ethereum versus Bitcoin versus either Tron or EOS or somewhere. Or do you think that different developers will aggregate towards one blockchain over another?
And I don't think they necessarily will aggregate. Look, when you're talking about decentralization, security, all of those are like, you have like this blanket and you're moving it around. So sometimes, you get speed, but it's less decentralized. Like for instance, EOS, you have those 21 verifiers and they can decide to censor a block if they want. Now, for some instances, you might not be worried about that. For some use cases, you'll use EOS for that. But if you have like very critical data that you want to make sure that nobody can block anything or censor, then you use Ethereum, but the price to pay is the speed, is the cost. So I think at the end of the day, developers will kind of use the hybrid solution. It's up to the community to bring them, to get them those libraries. So as a developer, I don't really have to break my head. I want to use this for that, this for that. Just give me a solution that uses different blockchains for different needs, and I just write code. We have to make it simpler, not just for users. We also have to make it simpler for the developers.
Mm-hmm. It must be pretty difficult for Dapp developers when developing these out, because if there's any issues with code or anything, it could cause severe problems later on if some vulnerability is found. How do developers take that into account when they're building these dApps to ensure that they're fully validated and don't have any major security issues?
I can take that. I just wanted to give someone else a chance to talk. If there's anyone else, I can provide my thoughts on that.
Feel free to start.
Okay, so there's a couple of there's plenty of other there's either automated solutions like Mithril or other solutions that actually scan the code and look for vulnerabilities, and there are software companies that will look over your code, look for vulnerabilities. They'll cost whatever they cost, but it makes a lot of sense because, like you said, that code once it's live, you usually don't want to change it because that raises a lot of problems. So, but you see more and more tools and companies that offer solutions for verifying, that the code actually does what it's supposed to do.
So, I guess I have this question for Or, is that what are some of the types of dApps that enterprises are looking for? We've seen several dApps already created, mostly around gambling or speculative asset creation, like CryptoKitties or something. But as we move towards enterprise adoption, what are enterprises wanting to use dApps for, and what are some of the issues that you guys have been working with them to solve?
Yeah, so in the enterprise world, I think what they will use first, I mean, they're still using first, is a private chain solution over a public chain solution, mainly because they want to keep themselves under control with who is going to run nodes and who will get access to the certain data. They don't want to expose the data as well, so it's another problem. So what enterprises will use right now is only probably a permission chain rather than a permissionless chain, and that is why us as a new permissionless chain, what we mostly targeting is the games and the general the decentralized applications rather than enterprises, because we know already what enterprises want. Right now, they don't want any permissionless ledger, but we hope that in the future they will want a permissionless ledger. So we are actually building tools that will connect our own private chain solution to our public chain solution. And if the enterprise wishes and chooses to, he can easily be upgraded as well to the permissionless ledger. It's very easy for us because we started with our framework, which is and the first use case that was a private chain. So it is for us to connect those two together. So if we have customer demand, that will be the first to actually be moved to our public chain solution. So it will take time, but hopefully it will get there in the future.
I'm going to take a question from the chat. Actually, this comes from James Gonzalez. He asks, how long do we see until technology and blockchain is used behind the scenes in dApps? Since we know that branding it with the tech is not going to work, unless, of course, in the early days of its longevity. I think what he's getting at there is that, right now, you always know when you're using a dApp. You have to either sign with your private keys or, you simply know. So at what point, or do you think it's actually going to happen that maybe in the next, 5 years that we start just seeing them run in the background, that we don't even know that we're actually using a dApp?
If I may take it. So basically, I mean, what we did in the enterprise world in Sweden, although they used basically a permission chain for that, is the same thing that James said. So like basically they had the problem that the process of buying and selling houses took them 3 months plus, very heavy paperwork, long process, lots of players as well, which were not having the ability to share their own data in a secured way with one another. And what we basically did was building a UI UX mobile application. And for the end user, he didn't even care or want to know he's using the blockchain in the backend for that. It was only our customers that knew they were using the blockchain for that specific app. And basically, the end user could do the whole process within the mobile app of buying and selling a house using our own platform. And he wasn't aware he was using it. It was a very flashy UI UX. Not flashy, but user-friendly. And you can buy and sell houses within an hour. We actually did one transaction and in that it worked beautifully. So for that example, I'm tagging that we did only one transaction, right? It did not be beyond that because of regulatory issues. But we learned that is what that will achieve to go to mainstream. Just like the HTTP protocol back in the old days, when now everybody is using it, but they don't know what it is.
So I guess just to touch on that a bit more, you mentioned the regulatory issues. Do you think they're currently hampering growth of dApp usage and dApp infrastructure?
Well, it depends. In Sweden, we had a problem of they didn't allow any digital signatures to be by law. So like you had to go to actually do a physical signature and go physically to the bank to actually sign it physically. So we had that problem to that what it's in progress in Sweden, but it takes a long time to change laws. So while it's in progress, I mean, once we can it approves, then we can go to production. And that's it. But it will take time. So I mean, certain countries have certain regulation issues for certain things. I mean, yes, it might be a problem as well with sharing data, privacy on data, and so forth.
Allie, do you want to take a jab at James's question?
Yeah, so I think that I think it'll come pretty soon, actually, where dApps, or not even dApps, just blockchains, crypto being used in the background without mainstream people knowing about any crypto at all, or the fact that whatever they're using is utilizing crypto. Yeah, I think it'll come pretty soon. Currently in this market, I still talk to a lot of projects, and in these projects, people have started to realize that UX is one of the biggest pain points and barriers to adoption. So they're focusing most of their resources on UX, and especially some game companies, not only the gameplay UX, but also the installation process, the wallet process, and yeah, I mean, games is a fierce industry, very competitive industry, but these companies are spending their resources on these parts that make it easy for a user to sign up and use. Another thing is if you take a look at the Brave browser, you don't have to know anything about crypto in order for it to work in the background, and you can start earning tokens. So, I mean, in that case, it's already happening.
Yeah, no, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one more thing is that as we're talking to dApps, we are seeing a shift, and like Ali said, user experience is becoming a major consideration. But also, and the shift that I'm seeing, which is very good, is dApps, the good ones, are no longer saying, hey, we're on blockchain, we're decentralized, that's why you should use us, because that might be interesting to people who are crypto nerds, but for the average user, not only they don't understand what that means, not truly, most of them, they don't really care. So they're focusing on what's important, on the value. So if you're talking about gaming and the fact that you can own the NFT and it's yours forever, then they're focusing on explaining that you can truly own the mods and skins that you buy, and you can trade them and you can sell them without any limitations. And that's what's interesting for the user. And the dApps are focusing on those values, that it's uncensorable, it's never down, it's yours, not saying, oh, it's on the blockchain, oh, it's decentralized. Nobody cares about that. So I think that's a shift that we're seeing, which is very good.
Mm. I guess this comes back to the regulatory issues that I was talking about, and this is also asked in chat as well too, is that how are dApps going to take into account different national laws and differences between maybe European and US laws concerning crypto usage and dApp usage. As a developer, you kind of have to you're designing something for everybody, and then you institute different rules and for people in different parts of the world, maybe based on their IP. But do you think that this is going to be a larger issue that comes up that starts limiting the use of dApps and limiting the rollout of its infrastructure because of these regulatory issues? Does anybody want to take a shot? I guess the biggest issue, or the easiest one to tackle, would be gambling, right? I just was taking a look at TronBet today, which looks really cool. But it's a very nice dApp which has been created by an anonymous group of developers, gambling is illegal in the United States, but it's allowed in different other countries. So I don't know. It seems to me that there could be greater issues with dApp rollout than what's being considered so far. Maybe it's a process of limiting the amount of people that can come and use it, or locking it down so it's more of almost like a centralized server that's opened up either by the company or by the people that are running it to the users themselves. So
yeah, I think if I can add something, I think with things like gambling, with like algorithmic stable coins where there's lending involved, all of these things are different, like regulated differently in different jurisdictions. But I think one of the biggest barriers to these, like in terms of jurisdictions being able to regulate these companies, is the lack of identity in blockchain. We still don't have a reliable way to match identities to addresses or match identities to accounts for that use these platforms, right? That use these dApps. But once that's built, then you can have these companies build in the KYC requirements. And yeah.
Yeah, it's a very hard use case to build.
Or did you have something?
Yeah, I said identity is a very hard, complex topic to build. Anybody who solves that will be a billionaire.
Yeah, I agree. The KYC issue is a big problem, but I think I totally agree with Allie. Once we have that, then we can go in the right direction, and it's going to be like a dance between the regulators and anonymous groups, which are going to keep pushing the envelope in terms of what's out there. And the regulators are in a situation where they kind of have to deal with it because, you know, I don't see the entire world agreeing together that they're blocking encryption or something. So you can't really block the blockchain. It's here. It's here to stay. It's a concept. Bitcoin proves that it can work and it's not going anywhere. So the regulators, they'll, you know, some countries will be totally against it. Some countries will adopt it. But slowly but surely, we will see some sort of, you know, way for it to coexist. The same way we saw with the internet, I think. I think the internet also, you know, raised some issues with regulators, but the benefits, you know, made it worthwhile to actually find the solutions. So yeah, once we have that KYC per address, then, you know, things will fall into place very quickly.
It sounds like going back to something that we were talking about earlier, it sounds like the biggest holdup for dApps right now may not be the regulators, but maybe instead Apple and Google, who create their walled gardens, and with
the private regulators.
Yeah, private regulators with their app stores, and getting around them may be much harder and may take much longer than getting around the regulators. So I know that there's Allie, you shared some information about some current court cases that are going on right now. Concerning Apple, and it would also pertain to the Google store as well too. I forget the name of it, but it will be coming up to the Supreme Court in a few months, where they're going to rule if Apple can be, if their app store can actually be sued for monopolistic practices, and if they win that suit, then it could possibly open up the app store to third-party development and third-party apps, which would include apps. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about this court case. Yeah, if it's found that Google and Apple are monopolies for their app stores, then it opens the doors for like a native dApp marketplace, right? Where and also currently one of the big problems I see with app stores is curation, right? There's a lot of I guess web-based app stores, and they're all competing on this curation aspect. I think that'll transfer over to native app stores if they are allowed, and it'll be interesting to see the challenges they face in terms of decentralized curation. So like TCL's token curated lists and things of that nature. So yeah. Sam, you're muted.
So we're getting close to the end. So let's go around and get some final comments from our panel, or we can start with you and then we can go to Tom and then finish up with Allie.
Yeah, I mean, feel free. I mean, what kind of comments?
Just some final comments on Dapp infrastructure and growth of Dapps over the next few years into the future.
Yeah, so I think it's really. I mean, right now the existing infrastructure to create a really decentralized application is not enough, and there will be a bunch of new players that are coming on board, including us. So I hope that in the next 1 to 2 years, once the really low level infrastructure is really built, then we can actually build a good decentralized applications with a very nice UI UX for the end user. So I mean, what we touched in the panel all over with the user friendliness for the end user, I guess, is what will bring the adoption to the mainstream, and I hope it will, because we really need decentralized applications. But right now, nobody has users at all.
Okay, so I think that we're seeing like the amount of developer adoption is amazing. Like 3 weeks from now, ETH Denver is taking place, and you're going to have around 1,500, 2,000 developers there hacking away, building Ethereum projects, which is amazing. And you might call me, an optimist, but I just believe that usually technology wins. There's no way to actually block it on a global level. And once we get those couple of killer applications out there, which, it's going to have that combination of great user experience, scaling solutions, and everything that's related, and they'll be out in the wild, and people will have value in using them, not just because it's blockchain. Because it's blockchain, it will have value, but people won't use them just because they really want to use a blockchain application. It will provide them some sort of value they couldn't get otherwise. And if it becomes viral, and that's going to be like a catalyst for all those problems that we're talking about, if it's regulation, if it's the private regulators, which is Apple and the Play Store, we might look back at it 5-10 years from now and be like, Apple Store? What's that? Oh, it's that centralized thing where they decided which app can run and which can, and it will look so archaic to people, because they'll be like, no, everything can run and anybody can build anything, and you can't really stop this global computer. So, I might be an optimist, but I really think that the technology is just gonna, win at the end of the day.
Allie, you want to quickly wrap up, and then we'll move on to the next panel?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that all it takes for a renaissance in crypto is a single Dapp that really gets mainstream adoption. So, yeah, like once we have that single Dapp that gets this mainstream adoption, devs will be interested, users, investment, infrastructure, and most importantly, attention again in the space. So yeah, just one of the important things to realize though is that a parallel we can see from the past is when we only had dial-up, we couldn't have imagined something like YouTube or Netflix, Instagram, right? They just took up way too much bandwidth. And so now we have to find, or someone needs to find the next thing that isn't possible with, or wasn't possible with the technology that we had pre-blockchain. And we have yet to find that, but I think it'll happen soon.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining, for being part of this panel. Allie, Tom, and Or. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.